Hey everyone, Bruce here. So Friday morning, it's kind of early, but we just finished 2 days of strategy retreat. Went through the entire three-hag process, a bunch of the scaling up tools, and today is the kind of the day of fun. So we're going to go out fly fishing for cobia for a little bit before I jump on a plane and head back to New York. And one interesting thing came up in the meetings yesterday, kind of towards the end, that I thought would be interesting to talk about, which is decision making and looking at outcomes. So there was an issue that came up, or an issue that got resolved. Unfortunately, it got resolved in a way that was not the best for the company, and the team was really kind of going back and trying to figure out what they did wrong, and kind of beating themselves up a little bit. And we took a step back, went back to the decision point, which was a couple weeks ago, and started talking about, okay, well, yeah, what did you do wrong? So we kind of mapped out the information they had, the issues they came up with, how they kind of evaluated, how they chose to do what they decided to do, and quite honestly, from my point of view, they didn't do anything wrong. They ended up with a bad outcome, and I think that's a concept which is a lot of teams kind of get wrong, and it goes both ways. I think a lot of teams end up with what was actually a good decision and just had a bad outcome on it, and vice versa. Sometimes they make bad decisions, but they get lucky. So. And we talked about it for a while. The concept that I'd like to bring up here is the difference between playing chess and playing poker. Playing chess, there is a right move, or there is a best move in many respects. It's a deterministic game. There's only so many possible combinations. You can kind of go through all the iterations of moves and figure out what the best move is. I think business is much more like poker, in that you have a hand, but there's a lot of externalities that determine what might be a good hand, might not, that you don't know, that is only probabilistic. So, which means that, you can look at a situation, you can have odds in certain favors, you can know that there's likelihoods of certain things happening, but you don't know for sure. So it always means that while you may have a 60 or 80% chance of being right, there's still a 40 or 20% chance that it could go the other way. And if it does go the other way, it doesn't mean you made a bad decision, and it just means you rolled snake eyes on that one. So think about that. One of the best tools that I find to help teams with this is retrospectives and decision-making journals. So looking at, when you're making a decision, being really clear on what information you're considering, the criteria used, the discussion around it, so that when later you know the outcome, you can go back to that decision and say, did we miss anything? Was there anything we could have done at that time? There's always things you could do later now that you know things, but at the time when we made the decision, what do we know? What were the criteria? What do we consider? What questions do we ask? What information do we gather? And we want to look back on that and say, hey, is there anything we could do differently in the future that would help us make this type of decision better? So keep that in mind. I think it's it can lead teams down false paths of either feeling like they're not doing a job, or false sense of security. So keep those in mind. I'll post a couple articles on this. I think I've written on this a couple of times with ink and stuff. But I'm sorry, my eyes are tearing, not because this is emotional, but because I've got sunscreen in my eye. So I'll post some things. If you're interested in talking more about this, ping me, email me, bruce@eckfeld.com. Like I said, it's one of the things that really good teams do well, which is keeping track of their decisions, or understanding how they make decisions, and then look back and figure out what they can do differently. So with that, hopefully your decisions go well. Hopefully you roll good dice, you get the outcomes you want, but know that that's not always the case. And getting better sometimes is just accepting bad outcomes as unprobabilistic, but certainly possible, and moving forward and getting better for it. So good luck in your decision making. Let me know if you have questions.